right, no one, oh, so it's time. Okay, I'm going to call the work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to order for November the 10th, 2020. This meeting is going to be conducted virtually, except with some modifications, which I'm going to go over. And we're limiting the physical access in the meeting room because of current limitations on public gatherings due to the pandemic. We've made accommodations to make sure that the public is able to participate in this meeting, and there are a number of ways. First, you can watch it on Franklin TV or the City of Franklin website, or you can live stream it through the City of Franklin Facebook or YouTube accounts. You can also call into a conference call number at 1-312-626-6799, meeting number ID 920-754-85320 with a passcode of 630881. Callers will be unmuted and given an opportunity to comment during the meeting at specific times. There is limited viewing here in City Hall to watch the live video. The public may email comments and questions prior to 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting to the recorder at franklintn.gov to be read aloud. Here are the addresses you want to know: www.youtube.com/users/City of Franklin, or City Facebook Live is www.facebook.com/City of Franklin. And the city website is www.franklintn.gov/Franklin TV. This meeting is formally called to order, and we're now going to call roll. Alderman Barnhill. Alderman Martin.
Present.
Alderman Bransford. Absent. Alderman Speedy.
Present.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Blanton. Not present. Alderman Peterson.
Present.
And Vice Mayor McClendon. No response. Absent. Item number 1, consideration resolution 2020-230, resolution declaring that the Board of Mayor and Alderman members shall meet on November the 10th, 2020 for a work session and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location, because it's necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve resolution 2020-230.
Thank you, Alderman Barnhill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Berger. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Bransford. Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman Berger.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor McClendon. Passes 5-0. Next is citizen comments, an opportunity for citizens to make comments that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone who wants to speak to this body tonight?
Mayor, I would like to make one on behalf of a citizen.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
I've been asked a couple of times on what is the status of the Hill property, and where are we as far as the affordable housing, some of the affordable housing issues, but specifically the Hill property. And I had to tell the gentleman that we hadn't done anything about it for several months. So I did tell him that I would bring it up tonight to see if we could maybe have a public comment as to where we stand on the Hill property and the development of that.
Go ahead, Mr. Girth, if you can update us.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Alderman. Our Building and Neighborhood Services team, Tom and Kathleen, have been working with Bill Squires in our law department and are getting ready to bring an agreement forward that will allow us to release a request for qualifications and what that frame would look like. I apologize. I didn't expect the question this evening. I know Tom is out of the office for a couple days, but I'm expecting it to be on the agenda for next week, or next meeting on the 24th, actually.
Okay.
Consideration, or at
Yeah.
least on the work session.
We had brought it to you in terms of some preparation to move that forward. The board asked a few questions related to how we would structure that. We're doing some work on that with the law department, and we'll bring it back either at that meeting or the meeting in December.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Mayor, I also have a comment, public
Go ahead,
comment.
Alderman Berger.
It's been brought to my attention by numerous residents of McKay's Mill about the speeding on Liberty Pike and Oxford Glen, and I have reported that to our police department, and they're going to be looking into that. But one of the problems we have, and I've noticed this all over town, but especially in a few neighborhoods where we have straightaway roads, like Liberty Pike, Oxford Glen, we have some issues in some other neighborhoods in my ward, but also downtown. And so I want to bring this up for public comment tonight by some of my constituents that asked me to speak to it. And I'm just going to put it out there so everybody knows about it. And I'm going to be asking our city administrator, our mayor, and our police chief for all of us to put our heads together and see about coming up with some solutions, because I've, on my own personal experience, along with some of my constituents, have also shared the same thing. We've been sitting out at cafes along Main Street. We've been sitting out different places when literally not only is the noise level so great that it scares children to scream and jump on their parents' lap, and I just witnessed that on Sunday, but the motorcycles and the engines and the trucks. So I want to put this out there for everyone, the aldermen to understand, and the public to know that I am bringing this forward. But I think we're all going to have to put our heads together and figure out how that we do not disrupt the quality of life that we have here. When I saw two children jump, literally get frightened because of the noise level when they were sitting at a cafe on the corner of one of the restaurants on Sunday and scream and cry and be fearful, then this has been going on for a long time, and I don't think we have a good solution for it. But I do want to put it out there, and I know other aldermen probably are hearing about this and have the same experience. So some of the constituents asked me to bring this up. I thought it would be a good time to bring it up at public comment tonight and just talk about it a little bit, just to let you know about it. And the solutions are not going to be easy, but I think we're going to have to come up with some solutions. And thank you for hearing this.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just comment real quickly, this topic came up a meeting or two ago a little bit when we talked about the traffic calming update to our policy and procedures there, and the concept around vehicle noise, whether it's the vehicle itself or amplification from the vehicle. Was brought up. I think Alderman Speedy was one of the folks who mentioned that. So that is on our list to look at and see what we can do. Some of that is, there are some limitations on what we can hear and having somebody present to do enforcement, but we are looking at what we have that on our list to look at and to bring some ideas back for discussion with the board.
Thank you, Eric. And it truly is affecting our quality of life. And when I see children very, very frightened and some issues, and I witnessed an extremely bad accident at the corner of First and Main. And we were very thankful that the lady went the opposite direction, did not come into the cafe. And she very well could have if she was going the opposite direction. So we have a lot of issues, but people on purpose, motorcycles and trucks especially, revving their engines on purpose and causing residents, businesses, citizens, a lot of problems and quality of life issues. So thanks, I appreciate that, Eric.
Mayor, may I just
Alderman
say,
Martin.
thank you, Alderman Berger, for bringing that up. I've been talking about this now for about 9 years because the noise goes on all night long, and it's disturbing to downtown residents as well as the people who are down on Main Street. And we have the long roads too. Fair Street is a street that has no barriers. It is from 5th Avenue to 11th Avenue without any stop signs. And so we've got a lot of issues downtown too. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I hope we can come to some conclusions about it. Thank you.
I think is there one other citizen comment, Angie? Next item. Okay, we'll move on to number 2, which is a public meeting recap of the City of Franklin floodplain regulations. Who's going to take that tonight?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll just say something real quick to introduce it. We're following up on work that came out of the zoning ordinance discussion a year ago, and there's been some review in public meetings. And so our purpose tonight is to bring that information back to you, share information from those discussions, and give you some staff recommendations and get your feedback. So I think Shanna's leading the way, but I don't know if Vernon or anybody else wants to chime in before Shanna takes it over.
Thank you, Eric. You explained it well. This is a follow-up to the public meeting we had very early in the year, following the request of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to look at a few specific sections of our floodplain regulations. So, and we're looking for some guidance. We would have hoped to have met again or a couple more times with some of the residents we met the first time with, but we wanted to get some feedback initially to see how we proceed forward and go from there. So take it away, Shanna.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Vernon and Eric have both stated, we did have the first of 2 public meetings back in March before the COVID outbreak. And tonight I just want to present you with a brief synopsis of that meeting and present these items for your consideration and guidance. Let's see. So in that first meeting, we discussed 4 topics: freeboard, substantial damage and improvement, valuation of structures, and floodway uses, specifically parking. Before we delve too deep into what those discussions were, I wanted to give you a little bit of understanding of what the community rating system is that we are a part of. The community rating system program was created by FEMA in 1990. It recognizes, encourages, and rewards communities and their citizens for exceeding the National Flood Insurance Program minimum standards to reduce and avoid flood damage to insurable properties, strengthen and support the flood insurance aspects of the National Flood Insurance Program, and foster comprehensive floodplain management. This is accomplished through reduced insurance premiums. There are 10 levels to the community rating system. The bare level is a level 10. You actually have to be at a level 9 for participation into the program, and that requires a minimum of 500 points. For each level, there's a 5% insurance premium reduction. The highest level is a level 1, and it grants a maximum reduction of 45% with a minimum of 4,500 points. The City of Franklin is currently at a level 8 with 1,213 points, which provides a 10% discount. So again, the first item that we discussed was freeboard. And for those of you that may not know what freeboard is, that is the minimum vertical separation that's required between the base flood elevation and the finished floor of a structure. Currently, the City of Franklin requires 3 feet above base flood elevation. There was some discussion from some citizens advocating that the requirement should be changed from 3 feet to 1 foot. And a citizen cited the Tennessee Association of Floodplain Managers example ordinance that states a minimum of 1 foot. The president of the Tennessee Association of Floodplain Managers was at this meeting and asserted that this is only an example and not a recommendation. The freeboard requirement in several jurisdictions, including Metro Nashville, is 3 foot or more. Some other things that were pointed out was that the additional cost associated with increased freeboard might be a barrier to affordable housing. If the requirement was only 1 foot, homeowners could still decide to have the increased freeboard if they so desired. And some citizens did state that the added cost of that extra 2 feet, in their opinion, was negligible compared to the damage that could be prevented and the peace of mind that those extra 2 feet provide. So the purpose of the floodplain regulations is to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare to minimize public and private losses due to flood conditions. With this purpose in mind, staff recommends leaving the freeboard requirement at 3 feet for residential structures. As well as providing added protection against flooding, the city receives 653 points with the community rating system for higher regulatory standards. In changing from 3 feet to 1 foot, 273 points would be lost from the community rating system program and would retrograde the city back to a level 9 and a 5% discount. Again, currently the city is at a level 8 and we get 10%, and the point levels are on a 500 point scale. The next item that we discussed was substantial damage and improvement. Existing structures in the floodplain can be repaired or improved, but if the cost of the repair or improvement exceeds 50% of the structure's value, then the structure has to be brought into full compliance with the current floodplain regulations. Currently, City of Franklin policy is that the value of the repairs and improvements is determined on a cumulative basis over a 10-year period. There were requests that the cumulative time frame used to calculate substantial damage and improvement be changed from 10 years to 5 years. The cumulative time frame applied is in an effort to prevent thousands of dollars and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in the case of non-residential structures to be continually invested in a structure that is non-compliant and is going to continually be damaged by flooding. FEMA does not mandate the number of years that it should be cumulative, but the CRS program does allot points for 5 and 10 year increments. Currently, the city is not receiving any points for this cumulative value because we did not have this written into our ordinance at the last recertification visit from the CRS program. A maximum of 90 points is available for the 10-year cumulative time frame and a maximum of 40 points for the 5-year. Staff does propose to change the 10-year cumulative time frame to 5 years. And as a side note, there is also the opportunity for a maximum of 20 additional points if the 50% threshold is reduced. Next thing that was discussed was how do we determine the value of a structure? Currently, the city uses the Williamson County Property Assessor's value and adds 15% to determine the value of a structure. There were requests that an independent appraisal also be considered. The Tennessee Association of Floodplain president informed the group that Metro does use the property assessor valuation, but also accepts an independent appraisal. There are no points associated with this for the community rating system program. FEMA does recommend that a community use a consistent method of determining values and suggests using the property assessor's value of a structure as it is widely available and consistent. FEMA does allow for independent appraisals as well. Staff proposes to include independent appraisals be an accepted method of determining a structure's value. And the last item that we discussed were floodway uses, in particular parking. For the FWO is the area where the water flows and is the highest velocity during a flood and storm event and is the highest hazard. The FWO mirrors FEMA's designated floodway. Currently, the uses that are permitted in the FWO are passive parks and natural areas, active recreation features that are city-owned and operated, and parking is not currently permitted. The FFO is the area where water is stored during a flood event, and it mirrors FEMA's 100-year floodplain. Current uses for the FFO are passive parks and natural areas, active recreation facilities, and parking areas. Public parks are often covered by floodway and floodplain or floodway fringe. And handicap accessible parking is required to serve the parks. For some park facilities, the only areas to locate parking is within the FWO. This could be addressed by a minor text amendment to the zoning ordinance. There were differing points of view regarding parking in the floodway. There was interest for the city to consider a revision to the ordinance to allow for parking pads and structures as an accessory use in the floodway in downtown. There were opposing views from residents in a subdivision that is just adjacent to the Harpeth River, that the city needs to make stronger emphasis on managing the floodplain and floodway and take more preventive measures rather than increasing the chances of flooding. The city does not currently receive any CRS points for higher regulatory standards for floodway encroachments, so there would be no impact for the CRS point system. Staff is still planning to host another public outreach meeting in 2021 for further discussions and ideas. And staff is requesting guidance from BOMA and Planning Commission on the topic and hope to address it in 2021. So just to recap what we've gone through, the recommendation that staff is presenting to you is no change in the freeboard requirement, change the substantial damage improvement cumulative time frame from 10 years to 5, allow for independent appraisals as an accepted method to determine a structure's value, and we're looking for guidance from you as to parking being a permitted use in the floodway. Thank you.
Okay, does any other staff want to chime in on this great presentation that we just had? Very informative.
Let me just Mayor, could I have Shanna just clarify one thing real quick?
Sure.
Shanna, describe a little more specifically that the insurance premium discount that people get because of our participation in the flood rating program. Exactly how do people see that? Is it just reflected in the reduction in their premium?
Yes.
How do they know they got it? How does that work?
It should be reflected in their premium statements that they receive, and it should show that discount.
So if they want to make sure, should they just talk to their insurance agent and
Yes.
just clarify that, hey, we're in this program and I'm supposed to be getting 10%. Did I get my 10%?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board?
I have a question.
Mayor, a couple.
Go ahead, Alderman Speedy.
So yeah, I guess a couple questions I'd like to know is like, I wonder, do we know how many homes are paying for flood insurance in Franklin? And then I guess, you know, with a potential, I guess, additional 35% reduction in premiums, that would be nice to know. And I'm just curious, I'm out there at I guess one of the FEMA sites, and, you know, it looks like the FEMA even offers a week-long course that's free for local officials, just on how to, you know, help local communities improve their program. I know there's several cities that they list are in class 1 through 4. So maybe after this COVID is over, could we send Shanna up to the FEMA class for a week, or somehow get a best practices from some of those cities that do have the higher premium reductions?
Yeah, pretty much most of the classes have been put on hold for the COVID issue, unfortunately. But I'm sorry, the first part of your question again was?
Just curious how many homes are actually paying for flood insurance in the city of Franklin. I'd be curious to know how many people then would potentially be looking at further reductions in their premiums if we could improve the CRS rating.
I don't have that number, but I can get that number.
Other comments or questions?
I do. I have one question.
Go ahead, Alderman Berger.
So on page 6 of your presentation, and you talked about the level, we are currently at, the city is at level 8, which provides the 10% discount. So if we change that 3 foot to 1 foot, saying we lose 273 points, so it would take us up to a level 9, which evidently going up is bad. So what point system would we be at, and how does that affect the discount? Well, currently 10%, what would it be then?
We would drop back to a 5% discount with that. In order to remain at a level 8, we would have to pick up points in some other area to stay at level 8.
It's based on a 500-point system?
Yeah, currently the city has 1,213 points. So to lose 200, I believe, I don't have the slide right in front of me.
273.
Yeah, to lose 273 would put us under that threshold.
All right. Okay, yeah, 940. Okay. All right, I just need to know that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions?
Mayor.
Mr. Girth? Well, let's go ahead, Alderman Barnhill, and then I'll go to Mr. Girth.
I guess I was sitting here listening. One other comment. What was negative about the additional parking? I mean, we're looking at parking. That's certainly an issue for downtown Franklin. So what was the negative comments about parking and using the flood fringe and areas like that for parking?
Well, first, that it's not listed as a permitted use in the zoning ordinance is the first issue. The citizens that did voice some concerns about it were concerned that it would have a negative, adding additional asphalt, concrete, so forth, and making any alterations there in the floodway would have a negative impact on their homes and their flooding situations because they were directly adjacent to the Harpeth River.
So the park is on one side of the Harpeth River, the home's on the other side.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask this? We're talking about
Absolutely.
the flood. We're talking about in the floodway, not the fringe, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And that does make a difference because if there were a kind of a flash flood, then it could sweep the vehicles away.
Other comments or questions?
Sorry.
I have Mr. Girth wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Shanna for putting this together. And Shanna has established credibility with both representatives of TEMA and FEMA for how she manages the floodway and floodplain uses within Franklin. As we talked about, 3 of the 4 items that were raised seem to have a certain level of consensus and understanding. Really, the parking in the floodway is one that we want to talk about further in the coming year when we can do it more freely. Not only from using parkland, that much of which is within the floodplain and floodway to allow parking, but perhaps to consider how we might activate the riverfront in our downtown area like other communities do. Not throughout the whole community, but maybe in a limited, very finite area. And that's why that'll require some more dialogue after the first of the year. And that's really the essence of where we hope to be talking about it more in the near future. So thank you.
Okay, let's keep moving along then. Great job.
Mr. Mayor, I have one.
Thank you. Good work.
We do have one public comment that I need to get into the record. Did you have another comment, Alderman Berger?
Yes, real quick. You mentioned, who was it that was mentioning, I think Ann, or someone was talking about the parking, and that if you add more asphalt, then you have concerns with flooding of homes and things. Well, do we not in this day and age have different technology that different things that we can use, like pervious surfaces where the water will go through and everything? If we're going to put a parking lot, we don't have to asphalt it. I would think there would be a different method to do that to allow the water to go through.
Go ahead, Shanna.
Yes, ma'am. There are pervious, obviously pervious asphalt, pervious concrete, but they do not hold up in the floodplain. As soon as a flood event happens, they're clogged with the sediment. So they're really not a very good product to use in the floodplain or floodway specifically for those reasons.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one public comment if you'd read it, and then we're going to keep moving along.
Okay.
Hello.
We have from the email, we have a Brian Laster, 424 Murfreesboro Road. My name is Brian Laster. My home is located in the 100-year floodplain. Hold on, so we'll get to you in just 1 second. Last year, my neighbors began a discussion with city staff and BOMA about the City of Franklin floodplain ordinance and its effect on home maintenance, repairs, and improvements. I would like to express my appreciation to BOMA and city staff for listening and being responsive to our concerns. I'd like to ask the board to support amending the floodplain ordinance in regards to the definition for substantial damage or improvements to allow valuation of the property to be determined by either an independent real estate appraiser or the county tax assessment per the homeowner's choice, and to support lowering the cumulative time monitored for substantial damage or improvements from 10 years to 5 years. These changes would have a positive quality of life effect on homeowners living within the floodplain overlay. Your Honor, it seems like we might have a couple people on the phone. Is that all right with you if we let them?
That'd be fine.
So I'm going to unmute or ask to unmute anybody who's on the phone. You each have 2 minutes.
Hello?
If you would like to say something.
Yes, this is Patrick Baggett at 422 Murfreesboro Road. I won't take the full 2 minutes, but I want to thank Shanna and the city staff for taking a look at this. We do appreciate it. It's a complicated matter, and of course, life safety is paramount. And so I appreciate the recommendations staff has made. I would also like to continue to encourage, maybe because of COVID, we didn't really get to dig in to a more study because that second meeting was canceled. I appreciate also Shanna saying that we would address this in 2021, specifically the free board. It's complicated. There's lots of insurance implications, and so there's two different segments of insurance implications, and so it really does deserve some additional attention, so that we don't just make a decision based off of misunderstandings of how premiums will react, and give property owners the most flexibility with their properties, while also obviously keeping them and their families and their properties safe. So it's been great dialogue thus far. Thank you, city and staff and community, and I look forward to continuing the discussions in 21.
Is there anybody else?
Yes, this is Martin Dunn from 147 Lancaster Drive, and I want to say that I agree with all the staff recommendations. In particular, I want to comment on that 3-foot freeboard. In 2010, I was standing in my home with the Harpeth River up to my knees. So ask me if I would feel better being 1 foot above the river or 3 feet. And the cost of the extra 2 feet, as was mentioned, is minimal compared to the cost of raising my house. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? If not, we're gonna move on, and we're gonna take items 3 through 7 all together. It has to do with rezoning and development plans, and parkland impact fees for Franklin Housing Authority project. So I'll let staff go ahead.
Thank you. And I can speak to items 3 through 6 for the ordinances to rezone and resolutions for the development plans. Basically, the Chickasaw PUD, which was a new development maybe back in 2017, they are changing their boundaries to accommodate the Cherokee Place PUD, which is just south. So the first ordinance and resolution is just to to change those boundaries within the development plan. So they're not adding any new buildings or anything. They're just to accommodate the Cherokee Place development plan. So I'll just jump to the Cherokee Place, since that's kind of the more prominent item for discussion tonight for the development plan. The applicant is proposing to construct 100 dwelling units within 21 new residential buildings as part of the Cherokee Place PUD. The plan calls for the removal of existing buildings and new buildings to be constructed. Envision Franklin states that infill and redevelopment near downtown Franklin should maintain the traditional residential character and reflect the scale of the area. Architecture, building setbacks, housing choices, scale, and walkability are important components of the design concept for mixed residential. The plan as proposed features a variety of building types with setbacks and architectural styling that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. Walkways create a pedestrian-friendly community that connect to city parks and surrounding green spaces. The plan overall meets the recommendations and principles of Envision Franklin. There are 2 modification of standards with this request. The first is requesting to revise minimum parking standards for multifamily be revised to 2.25 spaces per 2-bedroom unit and 2.75 spaces per 3-bedroom unit. Section 10.1.6 of the zoning ordinance states that a minimum of 2.5 spaces be provided for every 2-bedroom and 3 spaces for every 3-bedroom unit. In addition to site constraints, the applicant has provided additional examples and supplementary information that justifies the parking change request. So staff recommends approval of the first modification of standard. The second modification, the applicant is requesting to remove the 18-inch minimum height for non-multifamily building types foundation requirement. The zoning ordinance requires townhouse and duplex building types to have a minimum 18-inch foundation. In order to comply with applicable housing regulations, the residential buildings must be constructed at ground level or feature ADA accessible ramps to the various entrances on the various buildings. So given the public nature of this housing project, it is important to provide as much accessibility for each dwelling unit as possible. Staff recommends approval of modification of standard number 2. And for all the items, for items 3 through 6, staff recommends BOMA acknowledge all of these, and as well as conditions of approvals that are attached to the various staff reports. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and address number 7 if you would like to piggyback on Joey. So the Cherokee Place, they have the total impact fee is around $120,000. They are proposing to do neighborhood parks and amenities within this development. They would receive an offset of 75%. Staff is recommending approval of the Parkland impact fee contract.
Okay, questions, board?
I have a question or a comment.
We could take down so I can see people. Thank you.
Joey, I appreciate your sending me the elevation today. Did you get my note about the columns?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I got that note.
I don't know whether you can do that or not, but you know, little things can change the whole appearance of a neighborhood, and it can either be cheap looking or just with a slight twist. You can make it very attractive, and I think the people that are going to live in this facility or these homes deserve to have it as attractive as they can. And I hope that you would consider taking care of that.
Just to repeat the note that I received earlier, Alderman Martin sent me an email commenting on the columns for the units that featured porches and making them more prominent. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I do note that we have Alderman Vice Mayor McClendon with us, so we'll let the record show that. Any other comments or questions from the board? Ready to move on to item number 8, which is a request from the Franklin Housing Authority Executive Director Derwin Jackson for consideration of having the value of certain development fees associated with the redevelopment of the Housing Authority's Cherokee Place Plan Unit Development offset, and a discussion of an ordinance amendment to the city's municipal code regarding future requests involving the creation of affordable housing.
Thank you, Mayor. I can jump in on this one if I could. And Franklin Housing Authority Executive Director Derwin Jackson is here and can follow up and answer any questions you have. But Mr. Jackson has submitted a request for the proposed Cherokee Place plan development, in which they're going to be demolishing 72 units, but building back 100 units, so it'll equate to an additional 28 units. After he has requested that the certain development fees that equate to the road impact and the remaining parkland fees that Lisa just talked about be considered to be offset on this project. And what we talked about with our law department and finance team is that there's definitely a need to amend a section of the municipal code that makes the process clearer as we go forward with any entity, whether it's a not-for-profit entity, the housing authority, or a for-profit developer that may make a similar request. And so that'll be forthcoming in the next couple weeks, maybe a month or so for consideration. But in this request for Cherokee, the road impact fees for the additional 28 units equate to a little bit more than $146,000. And then, as Lisa mentioned, the remaining parkland impact fees are $30,000. So the total request is $176,652. And the primary purpose of the proposed amendment to the municipal code is not to consider this an offset for the road impact fees or parkland fees, but it would be a sum of money that's equivalent to it, because the delivery of the affordable units is when the offset would be returned to any developer. So they would pay those fees up front, just as they do, as developers do at the present time. We have the impact fee agreements that we present to the board, and then the special nuance in the delivery of deed restricted affordable homes would be that once they're delivered, a certificate of occupancy is issued, then we would provide whatever amount the Board of Mayor and Aldermen agree to provide for an incentive for providing those homes. I'll let Derwin talk a little bit further and then open it up for questions, if I may. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Board of Mayor and Aldermen. As always, I always appreciate the commitment that the city has always shown us in the past and helping us to do the things that we do, the city and the county. We couldn't do what we're doing without your support. And so, as always, in these developments that we do, there's always a gap in funding. Our investors that are looking at the project right now, we're looking at getting at least $10 million from the investors. That still leaves us about a $2 million gap. So we have to find, as a small housing authority, we have to find a way to make up those gaps by us putting in money, and then us, seeking how we can ask the city to help us as best you can. So part of this would reduce and helping us pay some of these fees, would help us to fill that gap that we have of $2 million, so this project can go forward. So that's kind of where we are tonight, asking you once again for your assistance in this and looking at this and to help us to carry this project on. So that's kind of where we are. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Comments or questions from the board? I have a question if no one else does. Could you refresh our memory what we did before, Mr. Girth or Mr. Jackson, on this project?
I'll take a try at it if I could. Well, with the Chickasaw development, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen did provide relief for the road impact and remaining parkland fees, similar to what was done with this project. Is that correct, Erwin?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
It was the value was a little bit more, but it was equivalent to the road impact and parkland fees.
Yes, exactly.
So this would be general fund money that replaces that. Is that correct?
That's why we want, yes, basically yes, but the reason we want to amend the municipal code is that we wouldn't be replacing the road impact fee ordinance or fund or the parkland fund. This would be written in such a way that it would be the equivalent value of those fees. So it would be just general fund money.
And to be clear, that's what we've done in the previous, on a case-by-case basis. The board went ahead and replaced those funds with a general fund contribution to the appropriate impact fee funds. So you'd be kind of putting that more affirmatively in your ordinance.
Mayor.
Alderman Barnhill.
I'm just trying to remember how we did do that, but I was thinking that we maybe put a fund in that the housing authority could draw from to pay the fees themselves. It's the same difference. It's $1 from a dollar to one hand and a dollar to the other, but you actually don't jeopardize any future fees being paid or parkland dedication fees being paid. You do it out of the general fund, but you make an appropriation that allows the housing to draw from that appropriation, which then in turn, they pay back and pay the fees with that appropriation then. And I could be, and we may have said that. That may have been what we were saying all along. That's not exactly what I understood that we said. My understanding was we took fees and put them back into the road impact fees and the parkland dedication fees that were not paid in. So there's a little bit of difference in that. And I sort of prefer my looking at it, and then you do not take out the fees. You actually would appropriate money to the housing authority in the amount, and they would pay the fees out of that appropriation.
If I thank you, Alderman Barnhill. And when we bring the ordinance back, that'll add clarity, because including the parkland fee ordinance as well as the road impact fee ordinance would make it much more complicated. We really want to streamline it with an appropriation, and that's how it would work. So the reason that we wanted Mr. Jackson to come this evening, he's working to assemble the financing package for the Cherokee Place development, and wanted just some type of a acknowledgement that we're going to be proceeding forward with the ordinance amendment that allow Franklin Housing Authority to take advantage of an appropriation appropriately, but also it'll make the process clear for any entity in the future.
And will that give the criteria we use?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, it will.
Okay, I need to backtrack just a little bit to make sure we had no public comments on items 3 through 6 or 7. Do we have any?
Callers have been asked to unmute. If you have a comment, go ahead and unmute yourself and share now, please.
Hello, this is Jeff Nichols. I live at 206 Old Liberty Pike, and I would like to discuss just for a moment the freeboard, if I could. I want to thank you all for looking into this, and I want to thank the folks at the zoning for the changes that they have made. But I would like to really take a look at the freeboard. The truth is, anything that we do as a homeowner is going to make a difference in our insurance. If I decide to add a pool, if you decide to expand your house, that's going to increase your insurance. Those are choices that you make. But I want to put some perspective on the numbers, the true numbers of what we're looking at here from a standpoint of insurance when it comes to the changes in freeboard. I know that Williamson County uses a 1 foot. In addition, Franklin used to use a 1 foot freeboard. But let's take just for a moment, and I'm happy to get this information to you. I'm looking at page 48 of the Tennessee Floodplain Management Quick Guide. They actually have numbers there for at BFE 1 foot, 2 foot, and 3 feet above. The truth is, somebody at 3 feet above, whether we have the freeboard at 3 feet or not, is going to get a particular premium. And the difference in premium off of this guide shows that at 3 feet, you'd be $482 a year. And at 1 foot above, you'd be $917 a year. But again, anyone at any of those numbers, the difference in the freeboard is not going to change the base number. So a person at base flood elevation would be $1,877 no matter what the freeboard is. But the real difference here is with CRS change between 8 and 9, it's a 5% difference. And so when we look at the cost of increasing, when I raised my house, the cost of increasing a house by 2 feet could be as little as $6,000 when you consider the block, the concrete, the rebar, everything else involved. Now, but it could be, if all you're raising is 2 feet, it could be as much as $30,000. But let's use the most conservative figure. If I use the numbers that I'm getting off of the Tennessee Floodplain Management Quick Guide, that 5% difference equates to I look at the cost at $6,000 to raise it 2 feet, the difference, the payoff would be 130 years for me to pay off that $6,000 difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're talking about savings from insurance, the truth is that 5%, that 5% at a 3 foot is $24 a year. At 1 foot is $46 a year. So I respectfully ask you let the homeowner, if a homeowner wants to raise their house 10 feet above base flood elevation, they can do that. They will get a decrease in their insurance.
I'm going to ask you to go ahead and wrap it up here, Mr. Nichols. We allow 2 minutes. And
I understand.
And there are going to be some additional meetings in 2021 regarding this. And I would suggest, if you haven't maybe discussed this with Shannon McCoy, that you might. She may be able to point out a few different interpretations than maybe what some of the conclusions you've drawn, but your point's well stated. So
I appreciate your time, Mayor.
Any other comments on any of the other? We were trying to go 3 through 7. If not, were there any comments on item 8 from the public? Okay, we'll keep moving along then. Item 10, I'm sorry, item 9 is progress reports on plan of services adopted from 2015 to the present, establishing a public hearing for December the 8th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, Alderman, there were changes made to the state annexation laws in 2015, and these changes included the notification process after a plan of service is adopted. It seems that a progress report is required 6 months after adoption and annually thereafter until all the city's obligations to the annexed property have been met. It became apparent to staff that we had not completed any of these progress reports, so this is an effort to catch ourselves up. In your packet tonight, there are 11 progress reports in one item. I will make a point that the state requires that each progress report be published in the newspaper and a public hearing be held. So at BOMA in a month, you'll see 11 individual reports that I will report on. You will not need to vote on them, only acknowledge them and listen to any public comments being made.
Any questions?
I just want to highlight that these reports show that we have met the commitments we made in the plan of service when it was originally adopted. I think there's maybe one exception, but we have addressed those over time. So while this report is just coming together for these various ones, the city has been following through consistently in meeting the plan of service commitments.
That's right. And out of the 11 progress reports, there's one item on one of the reports that has not been fulfilled at this time.
So
sorry, folks, I've lost a connection there for a second.
It's not been since 2015 that these reports haven't been in?
No, we had, just not noticed that was a requirement. And so we're doing our best to catch up. So all of the annexations we've done since 2015 are in your packet. They're the plan of services reports for each of those annexations. There's 11. And this will get us up to date. And as you can see by them, the city has fulfilled all of their obligations for these, and they did so within the first 6 months. So
So what you're saying is all requirements been fulfilled. We just haven't issued a report.
Yeah,
correct. To the state.
Intent of it by following through on the plan of service and making our commitments. We needed to do this, finish it up with this reporting mechanism, which we're doing now.
All right, thanks.
The reports don't get filed with the state. It's just the process of holding the public hearing. It's just a local procedural requirement. And in that 2015 state law with annexation, there were so many additions, and this is just one that fell through the cracks, honestly, but we're going to make sure that every 6 months we're sending these through in the future.
So Emily, if the state doesn't get those reports, who gets the reports, or we just file them at the city?
Just at the city, the BOMA receives the reports, and,
Okay,
and the public gets to see them publicly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Alderman Berger, if I may, I mean, you can think of it in terms of, you know, if you were the property owner where you were supposed to get plan of services, this is an opportunity for, if, you know, for you as a citizen to speak up if you, for whatever reason, were not getting your services as promised by the plan of service.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll go to item 10, which is a resolution 2020-157, a resolution amending resolution 215-26 to modify and update the plan of services for Carter's Creek, 1845 Carter's Creek Pike with the city of Franklin, established a public hearing for December the 8th, 2020.
Thank you, Mayor. I can address this one. This property was annexed into the city back in 2015, and it's the Camwood Equestrian Estate. And when it was annexed, there was certain requirements in the plan of service regarding the dedication extension of sanitary sewer to the property. Well, as they developed it as an agricultural use, it became evident that it wasn't possible to extend the sanitary sewer, and it remains an agricultural use. If you haven't visited the property, I invite you to. Camille Schaefer, who owns the property, and her husband have done a very nice job building some riding rings as well as a barn that meets commercial building standards, and a couple residents for the caretakers. We have updated that plan of services and taken it to the Planning Commission and bring it before you. That plan of service reflects everything that has been done to the property as it exists. And once it's approved, we'll issue a certificate of occupancy. Thank you.
Any comments? Do we have anybody on the phone about that one?
Callers, you've been asked to unmute. If you have a comment, go ahead.
Okay, we'll keep moving along. Item number 11 is a resolution 2020-172, a resolution providing next steps related to the road network and our future land uses in the West Harpeth area, defined as the area generally west of the new section of Macatcher Parkway between Hillsborough Road and Highway 96 West. This is back on to see if there's any additional discussions or questions tonight, and I think we do have some public comments also on this.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just to add on this, we do have this on both agendas. We did want to go ahead and put it on the work session as well in case there were specific questions by the board or the public on it. It is on and was deferred for a vote until the 7 o'clock meeting tonight. One of the questions that was asked at our last meeting that we did address in an updated version of the memo was, what is the legal standing of a small area plan? What's the board's role in that and versus the planning commissions? And we did add a paragraph in there in the background section that talks about how by state law it's considered an addendum or a component of the overall land use plan and is therefore a part of the planning commission's approval responsibility. However, in this process, BOMA and the Planning Commission will consider the small area plan together in joint workshop. It also influence decisions that the board ultimately makes in approving zoning and rezoning and approving development plans, and would refer to the guidance provided here and the decisions you make going forward. So it is a Planning Commission document that you have significant influence in and would be in dialogue with the Planning Commission about, and that ultimately the decisions you make in approving zoning and development would tie back to this plan. So while it's not your document directly, it is something that would provide a lot of guidance, both for you as a board, but also to the community, to property owners, et cetera, about what your expectations are. So I kind of gave a brief summary of that. I know Shauna and Emily both looked into that. So I think that was one of the primary outstanding issues that we had. Shauna or Emily, if you want to add to that, and then I'll hand it off to anybody else from staff who wants to add any other comments. But it's really on here for board to give us additional feedback or discussion and to hear any other comments you might have. Shauna, anything you want to add, or Emily, you want to add to that specific item? Okay.
Mayor, oh, excuse me.
Alderman Martin.
No, Shauna wants to talk. You go on, Shauna. I'll come after you.
No, I don't. I don't actually.
Okay. May
And I do see that Alderman Blanton has joined us, so that's good. So let the record show she's here. Go ahead, Alderman Martin.
Right?
Perfect.
Right. I just want to say that a miracle happened yesterday when all of the property owners met and came up with a consensus about their desires for this area, which all in a nutshell is limited development and a rural landscape and vistas left. Now, this can be achieved by taking out the collector roads, and the large sewer lines. This would limit intense development. Now, there are 9,000 people that I understand that have signed petitions for a small area plan. Actually, if this is done, this would take the place of a small area plan. It would involve transportation and sewer lines that were needed. I would say that option D takes care of all of it. But if the Board of Mayor and Aldermen would like to have a little study done, that's fine if you want to do that and put this in the form of a report. But I do not want to see us get involved in a year-long small area plan study, or even a transportation and sewer study. All we have to do is leave it like it is, with just some authority put within a report to make it into a plan. I just think that we could do this simply and without a lot of expense and time. And I think the fact that the property owners were all on the same page, which is really, that is a miracle. It just is, for that many people to be together and all be of like mind about property that they own. So that's really what I want to say. I'm against a small area plan, the time that it would take and the money that it would take, when really and truly it's not that complicated.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Peterson.
I think the option D that we heard about today certainly would be a very, very, very good way to handle this, with the people coming to agreement, as Alderman Martin said, but also the ideas from this seem to really handle many concerns that, and I especially like taking out the connector roads and just kind of going on from here, and especially hearing that quite a number of the property owners are interested in having development that is much less intense.
Mr. Mayor, Bev, I've got a comment.
Alderman Berger, go ahead.
Thank you. Last 2 weeks ago, when I asked for this to be deferred, I felt like there was so much information here that we really needed to study and fully understand, each and every one of us. So with the last 2 weeks, and especially the last few days, I've really been hashing over all this information, and I'm not opposed to this option D, but if Paul's on here, I'd like for him to at least speak to some of this infrastructure issue, because number one, I really think our land use plan, I think our development planning, I think our process is sufficient to get us through this without a comprehensive small area plan for this area. After looking at all this and finding out and talking to staff, but I do think that we have to figure out the infrastructure. I think we have to figure out the roads, and I think we have to figure out the sewer. And I'm not sure, even though I do like option D, it's a lot less cumbersome, it's a lot less intrusive with more government overlay and everything. Not that I oppose it so much, but I'm not sure it accomplishes what we need to accomplish. And my only thing about option B, if we do the infrastructure study, which I think is needed, I do not want to put the kiboshes on putting everybody on hold and sitting on a shelf. You got to go over there and sit on the shelf for 9 months while we do this study. I want to know how we can move the study ahead in a faster way, more judicious way. If the landowners would still have the ability to submit pre-applications, and I think they should do that, because if they did so, it would allow them to give their density. Because I think Paul and team, they're going to need to have some kind of idea about the density in order to do a sufficient study on sewer and infrastructure and roads. So how do we know about the density? I think the landowners ought to be able to have the ability to submit, have their pre-apps, let them go ahead and see what's next, like letters of availability for utilities. And then the last thing, I know that the Short property, they want to bring us an agricultural development, which to me sounds fabulous, because we're talking about rural development. So how can they go ahead, and why do we stop them during that 9 months of study? Horrible that we have to do 9 months, but Paul assures me maybe we can cut it down a little bit. Then they can go ahead and apply to request their land use plan change, because the land use plan over there, if I understand it right, doesn't even allow them for an agriculture development. So the three things I would think that if we go ahead and do a study, which I think we need, and I know Eric, you want to speak to this, and Paul, you want to speak to this, but if we go ahead and do that, we need to allow them the ability to continue and to do a pre-app, bring in the density. So Paul and the team have an idea of the density. And we probably need to hold them pretty much to that density, because if they say they're going to do 56 houses and they go, okay, oh, we need to now do 200, no more study, let them tell us 200. And if we go down, it might be different. But don't undersubmit something you need, because that's not going to help our study. And then let them go ahead and do their pre-app, let them go ahead and apply. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in February or March, we look at the land use plan. So those would be my recommendations. And I know you have something to say about that, Eric and Paul. So I'll be quiet and let you speak, and then maybe I might have another comment. Thank you.
I'd like to continue on through the alderman, and before I get the staff to make any comments, and I'd also like to get any comments from the public before we get to any staff comments. So I'll just
Mr. Mayor, could I say one thing? If somebody gets something approved for 56 and then they decide they want 200, they have to come back all the way through, including to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, to change a planned development. So just because somebody maybe applies for something that's lower than what they really want, if they change their minds, then they have to come back through the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So that would not be possible.
Thanks
Mr.
for
Mayor,
the clarification. Go ahead, Mr. Stuckey.
I just real quick, and I know you want to come back to staff later, and that's fine. We can do that. I think some of the public may be confused because option D is not something that's anywhere in your meeting materials. It came through as an email that some of us received this afternoon. So I just, and I think Alderman Martin did a good job of describing it, but it's not really in the content of your materials and not something that staff has been involved in or that has even been proposed to this point formally. So I'm a little concerned about having a discussion about an option that was put on the table somewhat informally by one individual consultant who was working with the group of landowners. And that's not to discount that feedback, but it's just not in your information, and it's not something staff has really had a chance to fully talk about or work through. I'd be glad to talk further later. I want to respect how you want to run the meeting, but I do want to note that this isn't something that's in your packet. It's not something that is formally in the material you've been considering for several weeks now.
Alderman Barnhill, would you like to make a comment?
Mayor, most of what Alderman have said so far has been, the general comments. We don't really need to change a great deal out there. And we've got, you need the road and infrastructure, those plans of services, which we did 2 weeks ago with option B. Then we looked at option C. I have not seen this option D, nor have I heard from any property owner out there who is in agreement with option D, nor have I seen an email on option D. So that is, and I'm not, all of this, that needs to be, that's not the way, that is not the way to handle this. It might be a grand old way of handling it at some point in time, but that option D, if we're looking at an option besides A, B, or C, it needs to be on the agenda here someplace, not in the form of an email. And like I said, I haven't seen it. So I'm concerned about what it says. And I'm also concerned about the fact that all of the property owners met and all of the property owners agree to this. I mean, who are we talking about as far as all of the property owners, and did they all agree? Because the Short family itself, they may have representatives, but they've got a dozen or more members that have signed every letter that I've seen from them. So I advise caution going forward with this, with option D, or not having staff looked at it and not having all of the aldermen having seen it before we get to the meeting tonight.
Alderman Speedy.
I guess I would concur with Alderman Martin on what she said, that I'm opposed to the small area plan C. If we're just looking at A, B, and C, I guess I'd go with B, but I do agree. I think a lot of those emails rolled in mid to late afternoon from the property owners, and it did list them. So maybe that's something we just explore, because again, it sounds like a lot of them were in agreement. So I guess I'd lean towards B if that's what we had to vote on or something tonight.
Alderman Blanton.
Sorry to be late this evening, but I was here as soon as I could get here. Yes, option D did come in later today, and I am pretty sure that a stakeholder from every one of the properties that were in this discussion were there. But again, it's kind of a memo we got late in the day. One thing that's not been brought up that I would like to address is that I don't think Brownland Farms should be involved in the small area study, whether it's A, B, C, D, or E, or whatever. I think they were already way down the road in their development plan, and I think trying to loop them into something just because they're in the vicinity is not, I don't think it's fair. I think, this discussion, it's interesting. It's like whiplash. We go back and forth, and I do appreciate Dana's comments last meeting, and I'm sure he'll make more wonderful comments when I'm through, but it is a legacy piece of property. It is a legacy decision. It's a, I wouldn't go so far to say it's the last frontier, but I think for me, when it all boils down to it, if all of these property owners are on the same page, they're the ones who own the land. And the citizens obviously have opinions, but, you know, we were talking today at lunch somewhere, and I won't say I had lunch with, but it was our counterparts in the county. And, you know, their problems are people who have property and now they can only put one dwelling on 5 acres. So, I mean, it's a problem across our region that we've got an influx of people who want to live here, and we're trying to pull the reins. And the only way we can do that is in these bodies of elected officials. But on the flip side of that coin, we don't want to minimize the opportunity for the land owner to, I feel like a broken record, but I love the word realize their investment sometimes generationally. And I don't think it's our job to hold their hands. I think we've laid the groundwork in what we've done, and the zoning we have is probably, from what I understand, Emily, nod your head, the least invasive zoning that we have by way of conservation. Well, maybe I'm not quite there. She doesn't want to back me up. That's okay. So all of that being said, I apologize for being long-winded. I have not had any coffee or anything. I don't want a small area study this minute. I do want Brownland Farm pulled out, and I do want us to continue to pursue with validity that the outcome of the meeting we're hearing about is true. I welcome all of those property owners, from Ellen Moore to Scott Gentry to whoever, to let us know that, so that we know how to make a decision based on truth. And I feel another deferral coming tonight. It's just all I'm going to say.
Vice Mayor, it's so nice to see your face. And Alderman Barnhill, can I come back to you? Or do you need to make a statement real quick?
The only thing I would make is that with all of the emails, I do have those emails. Not sure when they came in, but I do have them, and it says, yesterday, many property landowners of the West Harpeth Basin met at Christ Community Church. So I'm satisfied there was a meeting, and it says many landowners of the West Harpeth Basin. So I'm assuming many could very well mean all.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
If you
Do I need to give you a time limit?
You can if you like, Mayor.
No, I won't.
Okay. If you are watching at home, you might be wondering what happened, because last time we met, it looked like there was fairly widespread support for a small area plan. And I spoke in favor of it last time we met. So I think it's fair to tell people what happened in the meantime. In the meantime, I started getting a lot of calls from these landowners. I'm sure many of my fellow board members did too. Contrary to popular belief, we don't sit around and break the sunshine rule and talk to each other about what's going on. But for my part, I got a lot of calls from these landowners, and obviously they were very concerned about having everything that they've been thinking about doing delayed for a year or more while we did a small area plan. And I was consistent in telling them all, look, I don't want control necessarily. I want a good outcome. And a good outcome to me, as I said at the last public meeting, was that we probably could not get the best outcome if we just let one landowner after another show up separately and make their best case for their best outcome. That didn't seem to me to likely give us the best outcome as a community. So I told them all that. Anyone that called me, I said, look, I don't particularly want to spend $500,000 and spend a year with a consultant figuring out what to do. What I'm really concerned about is the best outcome. And the best outcome is we plan in this entire area where the roads and where the infrastructure, the sewer in particular, needs to go. And that's going to take some pushing and shoving among the landowners, because somebody's going to have the road. Somebody's going to have the sewer line. And if you guys want to go figure that out, great. But if you don't, we'll just do this small area plan, and you guys can all come and sit in the front row and tell us what you might have said if you had just gone and figured it out. It appears to me that under the threat of having a small area plan handed to them, these property owners got together, and I will say, to my knowledge, no elected official was there, which I think is good. It looks like they got together and they have come up with what they think solves the problem of balancing what they would like against what the community would like to see. Now, I don't know exactly what agreements or tentative plans that they have come up with. I haven't seen that. But I'm willing to entertain what their ideas are. So at this point, I'm willing to see what they've come up with, and see whether or not it meets their needs, which is a legitimate criteria, but it's certainly not the only one. The one that I'm most concerned about is, how does it turn out for the community as a whole? My understanding is that some of the connector roads, they propose some of the connector roads to be eliminated altogether, which may be okay. And I understand that at least one of the developers who has previously put a number on their pro forma and on their plan has significantly reduced the number of units that they might ask for permission to build, which in my estimation would be good. So at this point, nothing nefarious has happened. No one has sold anyone out. There's not been any deals made, and I'll just go ahead and get ahead of the social media machine and tell you that I didn't take any bribes, nor do I think anyone else did. I know that's coming. But I'm interested to see what they've come up with. What I would ask is that these landowners put their plan together and take it to our staff and let our staff vet it. And then when and if it's appropriate, bring it to us. I'm not willing to abandon the idea of a small area plan altogether. I'm willing to put that on hold. So for now, I would like for the landowners to package up what they think is a good outcome, take it to our staff and let our staff look at it. And to me, it's fine with me if we table this particular issue until we know more about what it is they think balances their needs versus the community's interests. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm now going to go to some citizen comments. Angie's going to read 5 or so emails, and then I think we have a few people on the phone, and I'm going to limit this to 2 minutes. If we could start timing, and we're going to be very precise about this.
This is from Sherry Lamb. I am requesting that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen consider the small area plan for the area that borders the Gentry Farm. I'm hoping you will do a small area plan to look at all of this area to plan development wisely. The goal should be quality of life issues, traffic congestion, preserving rural integrity of area, density, schools, etc. Gentry Farm is an important and long-standing asset of this community. Please do not destroy it. Requesting you vote for option C to do the small area plan so we have development so we can be proud 100 years from now, as Alderman McClendon so eloquently stated. This is Rob Teed from 136 Prospect Avenue, offering my feedback, expressing support for the small area plan to be decided on November 10th. Request that my comments be read. Okay, this is from Tara Baldwin. I have written this body multiple times in the past year, each time imploring that you see beyond the short-term gain and inflating tax base to the people who call this side of Franklin home. Please vote for option C to create a small area plan for this part of Franklin. Her address is 1553 Fleetwood Drive. Jim and Marty Garges, 1577 West Haven Boulevard. We urge the mayor and board of aldermen to vote in favor of developing a small area plan for the West Harpeth area. We feel that allowing dense development so close to and including historic farms will be detrimental to the future of Franklin. A comprehensive plan for the entire basin will consider the area as a whole and allow growth in a managed and measured way. Currently, the area is pastoral with large and small streams cutting through it. Large century trees grow and thrive. The air is clean and fresh. It provides us with many benefits that have not been lost on us during the pandemic. It's part of the life in Franklin we know and love. We believe the best solution is option C, a small area plan that will consider the uniqueness of the area in a way Envision Franklin does not and will allow for citizen input. This is from Brent Baldwin, 1720 Championship Boulevard. I'm writing to voice concern for development efforts for the West Harpeth area of Franklin. We've had one developer, Southern Land, already have a field day with other development in this area. I believe West Haven has more than enough new homes and traffic to a place that is truly an otherwise beautiful and special area of Franklin and Williamson County. We really don't need another massive development to ruin the unique landscape and open land that is remaining. Please vote option C for a small area plan to give the residents and landowners a voice on this matter. Okay, callers on the phone are being asked to unmute. If you would like to speak, go ahead. See, there's a caller unmuted. You can go ahead, please.
Hello, this is Jason Wynn, 904 Hamilton Branch Lane. I wanted, what you're hearing in the responses for support of a small area plan are coming from residents without the information that transpired yesterday. The consistent message that you're hearing from that group is they're all in agreement that the rural landscape needs to be protected in this area. BOMA has tasked the landowners, the developers, and the immediately affected property owners to get together to try to work through an option that would be beneficial to all of us. That's what was done yesterday. And I would encourage BOMA to add that option D to the amendment. Option D satisfies what the property owners that are selling their property are needing. It satisfies what the property owners that will remain, that will be surrounded by these developments, will need. And provided that CPS stays within the one house per acre on the 58 acres, and provided that the Harding Investments property that Del Rio Projects is looking at stays with what they're planning, which is 50 to 60 homes on 581 acres. There's no other option that's better for this community than option D. And I would ask that you all try to put that on the amendment for the 7 o'clock meeting. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other phone calls there? I might take a minute to speak on this issue if I might. And I appreciate the comments that Alderman Blanton made that these are legacy properties in that area of the city. And we had an opportunity whenever we did the Envision Franklin to look at those legacy properties and see how we wanted those properties to develop, and the input from the people that live there and other people in the city had their input on how they wanted that to develop. I think we have a plan on how it would develop and continue to maintain much of the character that we're talking about. I'm really concerned about Plan D. I was not in any of those meetings. I've seen some emails on them, But Plan D, to me, from what I know about it, with eliminating anything to do with roads or infrastructure, to me speaks of no plan. I think that the point that was made by Alderman Berger is that they're a way for some of these developments and properties that are already trying to move forward, move in a parallel fashion as we look at the infrastructure that's going to be needed for the future is extremely important. I'm concerned about a moving target. We've been accused many times of being a moving target with our Building and Neighborhood Services number of years ago, different results from different inspectors. And here we are that we're looking at properties and we're now zigging and zagging and changing direction as we move along. Whenever we've been talking, when property owners have been talking to staff about how to move forward on their property, and suddenly right in the middle of what they're doing, we're going to change and say, well, oh no, we're going to stop for a year or stop for 9 months, whatever it may be. And then we're going to let you know when you can come back in with your property. To me, that seems a bit unfair that we're giving these mixed messages to the property owners. I'm a property advocate. I want the property owners to be able to do what they want to with their land that's within reason. I don't know that there's any need to postpone this. We have a great plan, and let's move forward and figure out what the appropriate infrastructure is. So I'd like for staff to weigh in if they'd like.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll just, as I said before, option D, I don't know much about it. There was an email received today. Staff has not had a chance to engage and understand how it might fit. I will just say one of the hallmarks of Franklin has been that we do good long-term planning, good long-term land use planning. And in the time I've worked with you, almost 12 years, one of the things we've worked really hard on is to align that land use planning with infrastructure plans and investment plans for that infrastructure. And so I'm a little concerned that we would just say, yeah, we're gonna race these lines on maps and we know what we want to do, let's go forward. You know, this is a potential outcome, especially of option B, that you might look at these and you might end up modifying some of those master plans. But I would not do that quickly or lightly. I would make sure it fits and it aligns with your land use vision. So I think that is really important, that we don't back away from what has been one of the key reasons for our success, which is doing good long-term planning and seeing how that aligns with what property owners want to do, what your vision is for what the community needs and wants in those areas, and how that can all align. So I would urge you to give us an opportunity to be engaged in that conversation, to understand it, see how it might relate to the options we've already provided you, if you think that has merit. You know, I think we want to stay consistent with what has gotten us to be such a desirable community to live in, and that is doing this kind of long-term planning and aligning land use with infrastructure plans.
They tell me I'm muted. Any other staff want to weigh in before we move on?
I think Paul might have had something to add to that.
Yeah, Eric did a great job. Thank you, Mayor. Eric did a great Eric did a great job articulating the concerns that we have. You know, one of my concerns is with the sewer is our master plan right now, and yes, it can change, but it's a lot of deep gravity sanitary sewer. And as you look to do that sewer, it involves pump stations, it involves force mains. Some of those may have to go all the way back to the plant based on our master plan today. So when you start adding the infrastructure costs associated with that, developers have to work that into a pro forma and figure out how to pay for it, or we as a city have to step up and figure out how to pay for it. One of the fears I have is, does that start driving density up long term? Are there other infrastructure options? And if it drives density up, what does that ultimately do to our roadway network? So Eric is right in saying that we haven't been presented option D. we would really need to evaluate it to make sure that we're setting that infrastructure up long term and not allowing it to be piecemealed together. And unfortunately, I would love to say we could get that done in a month, but the reality is it takes time to get a contract approved by the board. It takes time to do the study. It takes time, if you would like us to engage those citizens, to properly do that and then bring it to a board for decisions on what we do with those two plans. And so we're happy to do all that. It just, unfortunately, it does take time to do. Happy to answer any additional questions.
There may be some other staff. Emily, you want to chime in, please?
I'd just like to kind of comment on a few things I've heard tonight and start off just by saying, you know, while we have multiple plans, we have our transportation plan, we have our land use plan, and we have our sewer basin plans. These are not done in a silo. They do all feed off of each other. And it is a little bit of a concern without knowing more about option D, that if it really is more about elimination of infrastructure, that does then impact the land uses that can be supported. And while conservation subdivision is a design concept that provides for 50% open space, by doing so, it also allows property owners to add additional density and cluster single family lots, townhouses, and big houses in the rest of the area to kind of compensate for the density that's lost in the area of open space preservation. And that's usually a great thing for property owners, but it does allow the density to be fairly moderate overall. And if we're talking about possible elimination of infrastructure, I don't know if that is, you know, we really need to weigh that out and make sure it can still support that conservation subdivision design concept. There is one design concept that is a lower density. It's our large lot residential. There is really, 1 acre lots. We could potentially be looking at something that's unique to this area, even depending on what that infrastructure planning looks like. So I just want to comment that these really do work hand in hand, and changing one aspect immediately impacts another. There was a comment made about agricultural uses not being supported. They are supported in this area right now, but however, commercial and multifamily are not. And I do have concerns that maybe some of these property owners actually have intentions of near higher classifications of intersections, actually may have plans to consider other land uses that are not strictly agricultural. So I worry a little bit about Envision Franklin amendments moving forward in the future that don't align with the infrastructure planning we're talking about right now. And it's really an unknown at this point. And if the property owners are really willing to sit down and say, we want a much more rural design aesthetic to to the development that we're going to design for our property, it may still need an Envision Franklin plan amendment to solidify that policy, because that's not what our plan says right now. So there's just a lot of different aspects that are all floating out there without really understanding what option D is. And I think we have a lot of things we need to evaluate if that's going to be something that we want to bring forward. So just a couple comments.
Ready to move forward?
Mr. Mayor, just say one extra thing. There's an awful lot to this. I just think we need to get these landowners together and let them bring a plan. They've obviously met and had agreement. Maybe they're the ones that need to be bringing us a plan, because I'm a property rights person, and I think that they have a right to say what they want to see here. And I think we've been very specific so far in the Envision Franklin plan. But density. How did we establish the density? Well, when we talked about infrastructure out there before with the land use plan, I mean, we didn't have any density numbers, so we basically had to guess at it or something. I don't know how we established the infrastructure or sewer. How do we get those plans with Envision Franklin and say what we think should go there? How do we do that the first time around? I don't know. This, in a way, I think the bottom line here is this deserves a lot more discussion. If we can't make a decision on this tonight, move forward with Plan B or option D that has been brought forward. I mean, it certainly could be brought forward and voted on tonight. If somebody wants that, we can discuss it. We can vote it up or down. We can go to option B then and vote that up or down. If the aldermen feel that they want to move forward on this, and if they do not, then I would suggest that maybe we have a work session strictly geared to this. Since we seem to have a lot of questions, we have a lot of opinions, and we have a lot of input here. But my bottom line is I really want the landowners who want to develop their properties and the landowners that are consistently around these properties to weigh in. I don't want 2,000 other people weighing in on this. I think we need to have the people in the area weighing in and the people who own the land. And those are just my comments. Thanks.
Okay, item 12, procurement award to Waste Management, Inc. of Tennessee, Cedar Ridge Landfill of Lewisburg at the unit price of $38.50 per ton for the first year plus 5% per year thereafter for sanitary landfill disposal of biosolid sludge produced at the water reclamation facility for a specific term of award with options to extend for the water management department. This sounds like a planning department description. I'm sorry. That's supposed to be funny, but anyway, it wasn't. So no questions about that. So we'll move on to item 13, which is a contract number 2020-0246 employment agreement with City Administrator Eric Stuckey. We're required to evaluate Mr. Stuckey periodically, which we've done. And we have determined that his performance is in the excellent range. We have gone forward on a new contract that will extend for 5 years. We've made a few changes in his contract to better reflect what exists for every other employee as far as vacation time. And we'll hear in just a moment also some additional ICMA retirement plans. So if there are any questions about that from the board, I'm glad to answer those. If not, we'll move to item 14, which is resolution 2020-220, resolution approving an amendment to the administrative services agreement with ICMA Retirement Corporation, which is what I referred to, where it gives Mr. Stuckey an additional opportunity for matching funds for contributions to a plan with ICMA Retirement. So are there any other comments or questions about it? If not, I'd like to adjourn this meeting so we can get ready for the voting meeting. We're adjourned.